The book of Judges, session number 36. Today we start with chapter 8. So we just saw how the battle was prepared and how God prepared his people for the battle. And then finally the battle was won, and how many spiritual lessons did we learn in this battle. Now we start with chapter 8 that talks about events and stuff and things that happened all the way up to the death of Gideon. Verse 1, And the men of Ephraim said unto Gideon, Why have you served us in this way, that you didn't call us when you went to fight with the Midianites? And they complained and had conflict with Gideon very sharply. And Gideon said unto them, What have I to do now in comparison to you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vineyards or the vintage of Abiezer? God has delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. And what was I able to do in comparison to you? Then their anger was abated towards him when he had said that. Do you know what is going on here? If you read these three verses, can you see what the deep spiritual lesson and meaning is here? Can you understand what's even happening here? Very important, I think. Very interesting, very deep, and very prophetic. Let me show you what I found. So first of all, remember, when Gideon was preparing to go into battle, when God raised him up, it says that he was from the tribe of Manasseh. Remember, this was chapter 6, Judges chapter 6, verse 15. I am from the family in Manasseh. Our family is the least and we are poor and blah, blah, blah. So Gideon was from the tribe of Manasseh. And now Ephraim was asking him, why when you went into battle, didn't you even call us? What are they talking about? Let's go to chapter 6, verse 35. So the spirit of Yahuwah came upon Gideon, and he sent out messengers throughout Manasseh. And he gathered all the people of Manasseh and Asher and Zebulun and Naphtali. And they all came up to meet him and go into battle with him. So now Ephraim is very angry. Why didn't Gideon call them? Why? What makes Manasseh and Naphtali and, Asher better than them? Did Gideon think Ephraim is too stupid to help him? They are very angry. They're upset. They are not appreciative of Gideon right now. So they're standing in front of him. You can just imagine. Here's poor Gideon. He's still tired and dusty and dirty from the battle. And Ephraim is still maybe full of blood because they chopped off the heads of Oreb and Zeb. And now they're standing here with their battle scars and blood dripping from the swords. And now they are already at each other's throats again. And Ephraim is now angry because they feel offended, because they didn't join in the full battle. Listen to this. This is why I think this is extremely important. They didn't join the battle from the beginning. And I just don't know where God has the time to put these prophecies in place in historical happenings. How? With a spiritual prophetic lesson for the future. How we had the time to arrange that Gideon never called Ephraim from the beginning. When was Ephraim called? Only here in chapter 7, verse 24. When after the 300 men surrounded the camp and they blew the trumpets, and Yahuwah started fighting inside the camp, and the Midianites killed each other and then ran away. And then the men of Israel and Naphtali and Asher and Manasseh ran after the Midianites and started destroying them. Then in verse 24, Gideon sent messengers throughout Ephraim to call them to also come. Then all the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together and they went to Beth Barah. Remember, house of new creation, house of being created out of nothing. So Ephraim is angry because Gideon has called all the other tribes, but not them, for the full battle. And now Gideon says, you guys, of course you also took part in the battle. You went and you slew the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. And that is a bigger thing. Listen to what Gideon says. What was I able to do in comparison with you? Chapter 8, verse 3. And as Gideon explained this thing, and as the logic, and maybe we are not catching the logic here yet, but as the logic was coming through, then it says in verse 3, then their anger, their frustration, their irritation, their offense was cooled down towards Gideon. Then they understood what he said, and they weren't angry anymore. So what is it that Gideon actually said? How could Ephraim at one moment be so angry? Why didn't you call us? And then he says something difficult. He says, what have I done now in comparison to you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? And because he said that, suddenly the situation is resolved, Suddenly everything is hunky-dory. Suddenly they are brothers again. And, they are happy. So let's try and investigate chapter 8, verse 2. He said, is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? So who's Abiezer? Remember, that's the father of Gideon. And that is from the tribe of Manasseh. So Gideon is saying that the vintage, what is a vintage? We are talking about grapes here, the grapes of Ephraim and the vintage of Abiezer. So the vintage of Abiezer obviously is something different to the grapes. When you crush a grape and you get the grape juice and then you go through the whole process of making wine, and then after some time has elapsed, the wine becomes a vintage. Today, if you Google vintage, you will get all beautiful, expensive ranges of vintage wines. So he's saying something to the effect of, because Manasseh and the other tribes came into the battle and into the preparation of the battle at a much earlier stage, it's almost like they've gone through the wine press, right? Because why? What did they do? What did Gideon do? In chapter 6, remember, he broke the altar of Baal, and he cut down the groves of the Baal worship. So he's gone through the winepress. He was tested. The winepress is also about judgment. So if he chose to remain stuck in his cave and he chose not to obey the calling of God, then he would have been judged by that. But because he chose to be crushed, his fear and his hiding away and all those things, to be crushed in the hand of God, that is how the grape juice came out of Gideon and Manasseh, and that grape juice became wine. And as they went through all this preparation and the testing by the water, they went through this whole process and they became vintage wine. So here Gideon says to Ephraim, by the time you came into the battle, at the season that you joined the battle, Manasseh, the house of Abiezer, has already become vintage wines. We are almost, put on the shelf, You still have to be crushed. You are the grapes. Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? So Ephraim comes in fresh into the battle. They haven't gone through all the stuff that Gideon and his people has gone through. But yet together, the vintage wine and the fresh new grapes that's gleaned from the harvest now came together. They were joined together in battle. The trumpets was blowing, and Ephraim joined the rest of the tribes. Although they were still in a grape condition, and the rest of the tribes was already in a vintage condition, still they joined the battle together. Still they overcame the enemy together. And look at this now. The vintage wine, the experienced tribes, they slew all the Midianites. But look at the amazing, what is the word? Privilege that Ephraim has. Although they didn't join the battle, they didn't break the altars of Baal, they didn't go through the testing at the water, their faith wasn't tested when they were told to blow a trumpet instead of having a sword in their hand, all these things. But yet, God gave them, Ephraim, the privilege of being the ones who killed the two princes, Oreb and Zeb. Because when you go into battle, it's normally the leader, the commander of the army that has the privilege to kill the commander of the enemy's army. How many times when you read the book of Samuel and Kings and Chronicles and blah, 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 will you see that when there was battle, the kings or the princes or the captains were always brought back into the camp. And then the leader of Israel then was able to kill the enemy's captain. It's not really meant for, we call it a greenie in the army. You are quite green. You only came in now. You didn't even go through your basic training. The rest of the tribes went through basic training, basic spiritual, physical, emotional, and very tough basic training. And they were loyal and patient and faithful and believing all the way through, up to the point where the battle was basically won. And now, at the last minute, while the battle is won, the enemy is killing themselves and they are running away. At the moment the enemy starts running away, chapter 7, verse 23, and then the men of Israel gathered themselves together out of Naphtali, Asher, and Manasseh, and they ran after the enemy. So the enemy is running away. And now, verse 24, Gideon sends out messengers to call Ephraim. What a lekker comfortable position. You sat on your backside, basically. You were left behind, basically. You were left to stay in the safety of your cave where you were hiding, while the rest of them had to come out of their caves, out of their hiding, and start being bold and strong and stand up against the enemy. But Ephraim was left alone, like a little baby, up to now. And now when the battle is won, and the enemy is running away, Ephraim is invited, and they have the privilege, and they come, and they just quickly ran behind, and they took the two princes of the Midianites, and they cut off their heads. What a privilege that is. That was actually supposed to be the honor of Gideon. But yet Gideon, as he saw the enemy running away, at that very moment, maybe for reasons he himself doesn't know, because again, this is God writing prophecy in historical events. At that very moment when the enemy was won and he saw the princes running away, he quickly sent a WhatsApp to Ephraim. Okay, guys, you can now join us in battle. Go and kill the two princes. You take the honor. You take the glory. You have part in the battle. And here Ephraim comes after they have taken the honor and they've killed Oreb and Zeb. And they come stand before Gideon and they complain now. Why didn't you allow us? Why didn't you even tell us that you are going into battle from the beginning? Why did you leave us until latest? And Gideon answered and said, you are the grapes. Isn't the gleaning, the ingathering of the end time harvest, because the grape harvest is the end time harvest, isn't the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage wine of the rest of us who has been fighting in the battle all along? And compared to you, you grapes, you Ephraim, what did I even do? You are the ones that killed the princes, the leaders, the captains of the Midianite army. You had the honor to do that. What did I do in comparison to that? What is my honor in comparison to your honor? You cut off the heads of the leaders of the whole enemy camp. And when he said that, basically, their anger was stilled. The only way that we can understand this is to ask the Word of God. Let's go to the Word of God that became flesh, and let us try and understand what He is teaching us here. Matthew chapter 20. Matthew chapter 20 from verse 1. For the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is a householder, a landlord, which went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. Do you see? Vineyard. The gleaning of the grapes compared to the vintage wine. This is now the kingdom of heaven, is like this man, God, who is the landlord of the vineyard. Because why? Israel, his people, his end time saints, are his vineyard. When he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard. So he went early in the morning. Look at verse 1. He went out early in the morning, and he found some laborers, and he promised them, and he agreed. He offered them a penny a day. They accepted his offer, and he sent them to start working in his vineyard early in the morning. But then he went out about the third hour. Now, when is the third hour? It's the third hour after sunrise. So let's say sunrise is 6 o'clock. So he went out at 9 o'clock, and he saw some others standing idle, doing nothing in the marketplace. And he said unto them, Go you also into the vineyard, and whatever is right, I will give to you. Doesn't even tell them it's a penny. And they went their way. Because they also, this landlord has a good reputation. Whatever is right, whatever is fair, he will pay them. They start working at 9 o'clock. He went out about the 6th hour, 12 o'clock, and the 9th hour, 3 o'clock. Is that right now? 6 plus 6 is 12, yeah. So about 12 o'clock and about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And he found people, and he said to them, Go work in the vineyard, and I will give you what is right. I will reward you what is right. And about the 11th hour, so 6 plus 11 is 17. So around about 5 o'clock, he went out and he found others standing idle. And he said unto them, Why do you stand here all the day long? Since early this morning, and then at 9 o'clock, then at 12 o'clock, then at 3 o'clock, all these other guys are working in the vineyard, right? And now it's 5 o'clock. It's almost Chila time. It's almost going home. Well, it is basically going home time. Why are you still standing here? And they said, No man has hired us. No man has called us. We have not heard the voice of God yet. We are still standing idle within Babylon, within Egypt, whatever. God hasn't called us yet. So he said to them, You also go into the vineyard, and whatever is right, I will give to you. You shall receive from me. So when evening was come, when is evening? It's basically 6 o'clock. So you have guys that was working since early in the morning, and then some of them since 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 5 o'clock. And 6 o'clock is cut-off time. Now everybody goes home. So you had some guys that was working the whole day, and you had some guys that only came in at the last minute, and they only worked for 1 hour. So when evening was come, the Lord of the vineyard said unto his steward, Call the laborers, and give them their hire. Begin from the last unto the first. So just like in the end days, the Lord will come, and he will call out his messengers, his angels, and they will gather all God's people, and then he will reward them. They will get their rewards. We see this all over the Bible. And when they came, they that were hired about the 11th hour, those people that came in at 5 o'clock, those people that have been standing around the entire day, never hearing the man, the Lord of the vineyard, that man is God, never hearing him calling them, never hearing his voice, only hearing his voice at the 11th hour, at 5 o'clock. They only worked for 1 hour, and they received every man a penny. They received their eternal reward. We're not talking about reward here. You're going to get 20 crowns and I'm just going to get 1 crown. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the reward of being able to be resurrected, man, out of death and meeting your creator, your husband, your king, your redeemer, your shepherd, face to face. It is a penny. And even if we came in at 5 o'clock, we get a penny. But when the first came, those who worked since early in the morning, they thought that because they worked the whole day, they will receive more, right? Because these guys that came in last, who only worked for 1 hour, they got a penny. So surely what is right will be that us, these guys are thinking, who's been working since early this morning, since freaking 6 o'clock this morning, we're going to get more. But when the first came, and they supposed that they would receive more, they also received every man a penny. So what did they do? When they received it, they murmured against the goodman of the house, saying, these last guys only worked for 1 hour, and you made them equal to us? We have borne the burden and the heat the entire day. But he answered one of them and said, friend, I did not do anything wrong to you. Did you not agree with me for a penny for your labor? Take now what is yours and go your way. I will give unto the last, even as unto you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with my own things? If your eye is evil, if you are jealous, are you jealous because I'm good? So the last shall be first, and the first last. For many are called, but few are chosen. Can you see how Yeshua is explaining to us Judges chapter 8 verse 1 to 3? Ephraim came in last. And isn't that true? Remember now, if you go back all the way to Genesis 48, and you remember how I showed you from Genesis all the way right through to Revelation, how Ephraim, the bastard seed of Joseph, who was the forgotten tribe of the forgotten son of the 12, but he was restored back to life. And his 2 children then received the firstborn blessing, but they are lost. So although they were lost and they didn't even exist until Jacob and his other brothers found out about them, just like that, Ephraim, the house of Ephraim, whenever you read the rest of the prophets, it always talks about Ephraim, who represents the 10 lost tribes. Even during the time of Rehoboam and Jeroboam, it was Ephraim that said to the 10 tribes, let's go up north, let's leave the house of David to its own. The 2 tribes of Judah and Benjamin. Because in Ephraim, there is symbolized the forgotten children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The divorced woman, the divorced wife of God, because she became a whore. And she was scattered into the entire earth. But in the last days, because it's now only, 40? Some people say 50 years. Only 40 to 50 years ago, did people start returning back to the Torah. Ephraim, who was sitting with their bums in church seats, Sunday after Sunday after Sunday for years, and never understood that we have to obey the God of creation and do his commandments and receive forgiveness under Yeshua, not Jesus Christos, who has a Christmas tree and a Sunday worship system with Ishtar eggs, who's white with blonde hair and blue eyes. We only learned the truth in the last hour. Earth is bound for 6,000 years. That's it. We are now in the end days. At the 11th hour, as was prophesied from Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, all the way through to Ezekiel, Jeremiah, every prophet, Hosea, every book in the Bible talks about the ingathering of the lost tribes of Israel, the lost sheep of the house of Ephraim, that will come in at the last hour as prophesied. Remember, I'm not lying to you. Let me remind you. Let us go back. Open your Bibles, Deuteronomy 4, verse 27. And Yahuwah shall scatter you among the nations, and you shall be left few in number among the heathen, where Yahuwah will scatter you. There you will serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, who neither see nor hear nor eat nor smell. But if from there you seek Yahuwah your Elohim, you shall find him. If you seek him with all your heart. When will you start seeking him? Verse 30, when you are in tribulation, and all these things are coming upon you in the last days. At the 11th hour, Ephraim starts seeking their God again. You can recognize yourself. I recognize myself. We are Ephraim. We are coming in at the 11th hour. We become, verse 30 of Deuteronomy 4, we come in and we have turned to Yahuwah our Elohim, and we became obedient to his voice. We have returned in covenant. Verse 31, for Yahuwah your Elohim is a merciful God. He will not forsake you, neither destroy you. He will not forget the covenant with Abram, Isaac, and Jacob. So we come in repentance back to God through the blood of the Pesach lamb. And we return to God, and he chooses us. We are the gleaning of the grapes. We are the grape harvest. We are not vintage wine yet. We have people that are vintage wines already. And that's why the older brother in the prodigal son parable of Yeshua was so angry, because he was working in the vineyard his whole life. And then this stupid, drunk, fornicating brother, younger brother of him, who went wasting his father's money and his inheritance, who ended up in the pigsty, now thinks he can come back into God's kingdom? What the hell? That's why the Bible talks about this anger between the house of Judah and the house of Ephraim. Just like there was anger between the older brothers and Joseph. And so with two trees, you have seen all these parables and all these comparisons and all this symbology that I've been showing you for years now of this, it is strife, this battle between the two houses. And now Ephraim comes, very arrogant, little Joseph, when he was still a spoiled little brat. And he's angry. My father chose all my older brothers to go and do this and do that. And I'm not allowed to do it. I have to stay home. So he became a spoiled little brat, and he went to look at what his older brothers were doing, and he came back home running back to daddy and being a little tattletale, a gossip. And that's why his brothers hated them, and eventually this battle ended up in them wanting to kill him and then selling him to become a slave. The whole story. The older brother does not like or accept or respect or even want to allow the younger brother to take the same credit and come back into the covenant. The people, the laborers that was working the whole day, didn't like the idea that the laborers that came in at the last hour gets the same reward as them. But God's kingdom works differently to me and you and older brother Judah and every human being's brains. He gives the same reward to the people working in the field the whole day than he gives to the people that came in only at the last hour. The same reward of resurrection and eternal life will be given to Abram, Isaac, and Jacob as it will be given to you and me. We only came in now. There's people in the world today that has been following the Torah and Yeshua their whole lives. I only came into this new understanding. It's not really new. This is the only understanding, the truth. Because we've only been deceived our whole entire lives. I only came into the truth about 16 years ago. And some people are only coming into the truth today, or maybe even next week, or maybe even 2 hours before Yeshua comes back. As long as they didn't take the mark of the beast. Please. But you know what I'm saying? And all of us, like the man on the cross, he did bad his whole life, only repented and asked forgiveness at the last hour before he died, getting the same reward. He was promised he will be in paradise one day. Not that day, but one day. Yeshua said to him that day, I say to you today, you will be with me in paradise. He gets the same reward as Jeremiah or David that has been following God his entire life. And this is what Gideon is trying to teach Ephraim. And besides that, here in this prophecy, Gideon is actually showing Ephraim they have nothing to complain about. Not only do they get the same honor for a battle in which they only did a little bit, but they're actually getting higher honors. They killed Oreb and Zeb, the princes of the enemy. Oreb in Hebrew means raven, like a crow, and Zeb in Hebrew means wolf. So the crow, the unclean raven, you know, when you see a crow, you always think about death. And when we see a wolf, we always think about, danger. He's going to come and kill the sheep. So Ephraim has the chance here at the 11th hour. God allows them. He only calls them as per prophecy in the end days. And they come into this battle. And our forefathers and people that has been on this road much longer than us has been fighting the entire battle. And because they have been blowing the trumpet, because they have been breaking their clay jars and showing us the light, because they have done this, we in the end days, the grapes that's been gleaned in the grape harvest, we get the opportunity to fight the death crow and the wolf, and we get the same result. We get the same honor. We get even a bit more honor because they've been fighting the entire battle. We only get the privilege of cutting off these two princes' head. Isn't that amazing? And that is why Judges 8 verse 3, then their anger was abated towards him when he said that to him. Ephraim in chapter 7 verse 24 were gathered at Beth Barah, the house of being created out of nothing. Out of nothingness, out of I am nothing, Father. As I was bowing before Christmas trees my whole life, I was nothing, yet you bring me to the living waters of the rock of my salvation. And you crush me as an end-time harvest grape, and you make wine of me. And I'm not a vintage yet. I'm just a grape in your hand. Yet you use me, and whoever follows me, whoever is still ahead of your grapes, still to be gleaned, coming in early in the morning, 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock, and even at 5 o'clock, all of those still have to be gleaned from the vineyard and have to be used in your hand. You are the landlord, you are the farmer, you are the husbandman. And you use us even in the 11th hour to do a fantastic, wonderful, strong battle against the black raven and the ravenous wolf. Father, I praise you that in the book of Judges, you are teaching us end-time strategies. May you remind the house of Judah as well. May you remind our older brother that this is what's happening to Christians who comes out of Babylon and wants to be reunited and grafted back into the olive tree. Let their eyes be opened because they have been blind for such a long time. And Father, Ephraim also, like you prophesied Yeshua through raising the dead daughter of Jairus, who was 12 years old, raising your entire house, your entire Beth Bara, back to life like the daughter of Jairus, cleansing us from our dirty menstruation dead blood of the woman that was having the blood illness for 12 years, that touched the seams of your hem, the hem of your garment, Yeshua, because she knew the prophecy in Hosea that said, the Son of Righteousness will rise upon you with healing in his wings. Like that, you are raising through the power of your word, coming on the breath, the ruach of the voice of God, out of the mouth of God, comes his word and his breath to raise up all 12 tribes and bring in the grapes, the laborers in the 11th hour, calling Ephraim, sending out messengers like Gideon, so that we can all stand together in the end day battle. And when you resurrect us, we all get the same reward. There's no bigger reward for me, Father. I don't know about the rest of the listeners, but for me, to be resurrected one day and hear the voice of the Master, well done, good and faithful servant. That is a reward that I will trade for nothing else. Amen.